All right, welcome back, Visions fans. This is the Leonis report. JB and I back again for another week. We got a lot of exciting news considering some of the in-game event and the new characters and whatnot. But good to see you again as always, JB. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Glad to be back, and it's exciting week for the game. Got a lot coming in. We got Saul. We've got the Vision card as well, so kind of doubling up there. Kind of compressing, I guess, a little bit for us, and yeah, Trials of Reckoning too. So
Yep,
going to be a lot of farming going on this week. How you doing?
definitely good. Same old. It's been a good week this past week. We got very fortunate with the Road to Worldwide gifts and just like the amount of like I don't know, just summons and stuff and the triple farming. I've gotten all my like Alchris caught up, so I'm sitting in a good spot now, waiting for that Reincarnation Festival in a couple weeks and Saul coming out now, and we'll see what
What'd you
happens.
do on the polls? I think we got another 50 coming still.
You know what? I basically have everything I needed. I really needed another select vision card. I got one of two vision cards I needed. I needed the Grom's vision card, which is the strike res for glove units, which I figured like now more than ever would be a great time to pull it.
Yeah, it's a
And
good one.
the other one I still want is the Minotaur one, which it's just so niche. I just haven't felt like investing it as a priority. But you know, I'm an Esper and a vision card. I'm still looking for it. But regardless, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. We have Soul, who's announced he's got a vision card coming along the same week as him. They're not staggering that. We have the Trials of Reckoning we're going to talk about. A couple MA2s and Limit Break upgrades. The Limit Break ones are really the priority there. And we'll obviously do our limited Guild War overview, things that we've seen. We'll do a quick little arena PvP versus each other, kind of test out some fun teams of what you might encounter. We'll talk about Alaya and the meta that she's bringing in and what you can do to fight against it still. We'll look at the new Astrius Unit that was released in JP, and then a couple Q&A to round things off. But kicking things off here, yeah, Soul, the FFBE villain, finally coming in here. You excited for his release here?
I am. I mean, we've mentioned on the podcast several times, like big FFB player back in the day. Still play it a little bit, kind of very casually now, just kind of collecting units here and there. But always a big fan of that original season one story, especially. I think out of all the seasons, that one was my favorite. And Saul, ended up I think being a fan favorite for a big part of the community. So I'm glad that he's coming into the game. Like we said it a few weeks ago when he was first announced in JP, he wasn't like the first character I thought of when I was like, well, who's going to be the next FFB unit? But now that he's here, I'm pretty stoked for it because he's a cool character.
Agreed. And they've done some great things with him to kind of shake things up in the current state of the game. I know we've kind of lamented the speed of power creep, and he is a part of that alongside characters like Summer Glacial and Bridal Alaya. But once they've kind of like opened this floodgate, you kind of just have to like roll with the tide, if you know what I mean. So, it's nice to have him in here to kind of add another element and dimension, particularly because the last year has really been very like slash oriented, little strike here and there. It's nice to finally have like a magic unit here too, where we just had this conversation like missile is not really doing a whole lot. Although Pierce is kind of a thing, it's not nearly as prevalent as those other types. So very cool to get a little twist. But I am intrigued. We can always talk about this. But you talk about a new magic unit, another fire magic unit. We've already had two this year, three this year. We've had Roy, we've had Kefka, and then Shals technically fits into that, and it like kind of begs the question, what makes him different? And do you think you'll see things in global that we did in JP? What kind of things about him do you think set him apart from some of those other characters?
I think that it's really been a minute since we've seen a really like physically tanky mage, like somebody that can be right up on the front line with your tank, a true bruiser, like true physical bruiser. And that is exactly what Saul is. He very much, he's got a great physical barrier, and he's very anti-strike. That's kind of his main niche. He's going to come in and completely put a stop to many of the strike units and teams out there. Alaya, obviously, she's still got that niche of being able to pierce through some of that resistance, but Saul's going to be able to stand up to her very well. Like I said, strong barrier. Obviously, getting to those units with magic damage is one of the best ways. So he does that. He also brings courage removal. So he fits right in with like a glove with kind of what we need right now to kind of battle up against some of those teams out there right now.
Absolutely right, and he's got a couple select two abilities, which she does. So there is some like transition there. So it's not a huge 180 shift, but it is magic oriented. He does technically set the bar a little bit for penetrations, where he comes with 30 innate magic res pen. Obviously, another 10 from a Trust Stone passive. Technically, has an ability on one of his sub jobs that I think it's like another 40 for that cast. So there's some magic busting potential. He's an easy 90 Spirit Pen unit too. So even in addition to that brawliness that you're talking about, which he's got some heal back abilities, he's got kind of like his healer AI that mid fight he'll heal himself or an ally. That just makes him incredibly not only difficult to take down, but difficult to survive against. You talk about what he has for poison, some of that damage over time that contributes to the battle. There's just so much that he does that other characters don't do. And he's got a unique mechanic here with like the bigger the AOE, the less damage he takes from it. There's some cool things that they've created for him, but I'm sure a lot of people are kind of spent for Viz at the moment, but he's still one of those units that's worth the investment for sure.
He's very unique with his AI when you think of him as an attacker. He's almost, we were talking about this in my guild Discord earlier, that's very similar to a Freyhivia where, he in the middle of the battle, if, he'll just heal somebody if they need it, right? If you
Yep,
have like the Mashari TMR or the Unit TMR or whatever. And then I think he'll also favor his attacks that will heal somebody, if they need it. So
yep.
very like supportive AI, which is very, very cool in a different angle than we've seen on a lot of these damage dealers lately.
Absolutely. And Gumi's done something new here where we have triple hard quest drops for him, halved barracks time, which I know is something that I think they did for JP for many units. So it's nice that they're kind of giving us that break, if you will, of being able to acquire those. I know that I'll probably actually it's not a problem. I'm definitely pulling for him. Is he on your radar to pull immediately? Or are you gonna slow build him at all? What are your plans?
I'm pulling for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, big FFBE fan, big Fire fan. Obviously, I had run with Yuffie, and Kefka, so I have those units already ready to go if he has potential teammates. Rain is ready to go. I mean, I have all the units to kind of slot in beside him, so it's going to be fun to kind of play around with the different permutations because there certainly is a lot of different ways you can build him. There's a lot of good and viable ways, I think, too.
Absolutely, and a lot of teams too. He, like Alaya, is one of those characters that's an easy rainbow unit that doesn't require a lot of vision card support because of what they have innately for buffs and for penetrations. What he has for just like a unique kind of damage that people aren't necessarily gearing for, so you kind of take attack from that angle. That he's got a lot of iterations of teams that he seems to work well, and it's not just like mono magic fire. It's a whole bunch of things. Quite frequently, you'll see Alaya and Soul together, like just the two busted units, and it's hard to defend both of what they do. You have re-raise removed from her and coverage removed from him, and there's some self-sustain between the two of them and two damage types. And like I said, the penetration, the select two, the eight, like you go down the list, it's like almost indefensible for how you can fight against that. But do you have any thoughts up front about how you might start to even like counter the soul meta of sorts?
At this point, we with this unit coming in, we're firmly kind of in this unit attack or unit resist meta. It started with Alaya, and it's very different from what we've been used to coming in from an area resist meta with units like Sephiroth and Bradley who hit with those high damage large AOEs. We don't have as many defenses or units that can handle those unit attacks, and the ones that do, many of them are more recent. That is kind of they've kind of set the table with this new meta. These two characters started, and as we go forward, we'll get units that will be able to handle it better. So, in terms of like how I might go up against him, I mean, you have to first look at the water element,
Yep.
obviously that's tough with Alaya running around if they're potentially working together, but you can mix water with earth potentially. We do have Dark Siren and Summer Glassy is a great rainbow tank that you can potentially build around. Obviously, she's not the greatest against magic, but you can kind of cheat her build and kind of work on that, build up some fire resistance and things like that. So, I mean, aside from that, I know that a lot of people over in JP looked to Amnelis. So,
Yep.
kind of the first time we've been talking about, dusting her off in the meta, since she came out. So
Absolutely.
that'll be interesting to try to get to use her. I know people just used her with Saul as well because they're both devout and kind of their cards work great together too. So, yeah, how about you?
Same. I know M. Ellis was one of the first that came to mind. I know Rain, the old, OG tank is another one because he is one of the better magic tanks in the game. Strike isn't necessarily his strong point, so seeing Alaya as well, but his vision card does hedge some of that. There are ways to still build it up that, as far as magic tanking go, he does well. I've played with the idea of Celeste in terms of going back to that magic tank and runic blade and what she can specifically do, and she does have some strike weakness as well, but there's some things you can do to obviously hedge that. I don't have high hopes though. There's not a quick and easy answer from what I can tell to really stop him. I would just think, it's kind of the thing, you don't want to bring characters that are too reliant on their courage. That's usually a recipe for disaster. Like, one of the best things you can do against a character with a lot of utility is bring teams where that utility doesn't mean anything. So, for instance, like going against Alaya, if you have a team that has no re-raise, then that part of her kit is just useless. And I think there's some things you can do with Soul in that same regard in terms of not relying too heavily on people with courage, not relying too heavily on people that 97 faith, even where that amplifies the damage. His poison status effect is more amplified in that percentage. So there's some things you can do that kind of like play against it. I am intrigued though to see some of the poison counterplay though and what people come up with, because I wouldn't sleep on that damage type. I think that's going to be potent.
I mean, another thing that you think about when going up against mages is just silencing them too, right? And
Dark,
Summer Jaden comes
dark
to mind.
Dark Leela the
Uh,
Bold, the SR unit, that AoE
yeah,
silence.
Little Leela.
Little
Obviously,
Leela,
that's
thank you.
kind
Sorry.
of
Yep.
yeah. She's got that unbelievable diamond AOE silence with the huge chance to even like limit burst level chance to silence. So even if they're rocking a trust stone or something, she'll still be able to get a 97 faith unit
Yep.
most of the time. And that's something JP has done, that they've had to turn to that SR unit because there's just so few great options out there to really shut that unit down, and that's why he's been the king of the meta here for since he came out essentially.
Mm-hmm. And I know two things I wanted to bring up too encountering him. One of them on the ailment is like the Vega TMR, that berserk potential is like a gimme for most characters. The second thing is leaning into missile, which we were just kind of crapping on, but there's a legitimate range disadvantage there and maybe a negative weakness there that you talk about trying to implement a new damage type in there. I know we've played with some of those things. And the last thing,
Well, another thing
yeah,
that a lot of the ones that we've just been mentioning are like magic based units. And that's because, like, if you're going up against him with physical, you really need somebody that has a barrier break. And within the water elements, those are few and far
not
between.
many.
Like in terms of physical barrier breaks, there's really only a couple that bring it. Astrius is one, though it's kind of limited in its range, if I remember correctly. One kind of interesting option I was looking at was Chunak, actually, because
Oh, thank you.
Saul is not the greatest in terms of his accuracy,
No, evade
and
units. Yes.
yeah. So Chunak, he's pretty evady, especially if you have both luck cards there for water. He actually has that unit resist break on his LB of 38%. That'll be huge if you're bringing unit attacks against Saul. He does have a defense break slash barrier break as well, which will be a great way to get at him with physical units. So another possibility for maybe an older unit.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was the angle I was going to go with this final one. He was bringing in an evade unit where he does have a 100% hit chance, but it is a lower mod. It's typeless, so it doesn't get any kind of fire attack associated with it. And although Alaya can be built very, very accurately, and there are a couple other fire units which probably could be, I think that's the one angle where you catch people off guard where uh, Alaya will still miss people when not properly geared for sure. So I think evade does have a niche here to fill in this new meta that we'll see.
And then also fire too is another go fight fire with fire if you have the Keepers of the Crystal card with that very niche 20 fire resistance. So that's definitely another possibility.
And it's funny. That's actually one of the things in my character reviews I applauded Saul for was that he, like many units, has a fair amount of typeless attacks. His limit break is typeless. I think the guaranteed hit is typeless. I think that sub job that has like the dual spirit and magic pen is a typeless type attack. So it's one of those things that like even if you do hard gear for it, he still has ways to still get through it, which is difficult to deal with. He is also getting his vision card here, which is obviously staff devout, but it's also the warrior in terms of the sword class and great sword as well. It's another 15% agility one here. You get some element chain res, some magic human killer. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this card yet. Obviously, we've applauded the artwork before, but in terms of balance, do you have any high hopes for this vision card?
So I'm kind of estimating there based on that bestowed ability. They announced that those pictured FFBE units were going to get an HP upgrade. So I threw it in there like because that was the only stat. I figured it has to be like at least 15%. So could be up to 20 though. That would be pretty significant because Saul has pretty high base HP for a caster. So
Absolutely.
um, it's a cool card. It's interesting that it's got the elemental chain resist on there as well because that's part of I believe that Greatsword actually has some other elemental chain resist cards that you could potentially stack with that.
I
So
believe so. Yeah.
yeah, so that's pretty interesting. I think there's one card that we're actually missing, which is that El Sorel card there.
Also correct. And you're right. Chain res here is on the Sildra vision card. So you're right. That is
Oh, that's right. This
a second
yeah,
source of it.
the so that might be kind of an interesting angle if you're kind of going up against heavy chainers. But I definitely like the synergy between Devout and Greatsword. This is kind of several cards now we've seen, including Area Resist, which is Silver Memories, that Minwu card,
Yep.
one of the better ones for Saul, and kind of mixing him with those other groups. So yeah, I'm definitely going for this one. I think agility cards are like a primo, team enabler. So very, very solid.
Agree. I will say I'm a little on the fence though on pulling it in the short term. I feel like this is a card that likely will yield some better benefits in the future. Where I do like the Greatsword cards. I don't like the Greatsword units at the moment though. Back when this first all started, June was still like a top tier unit that I remember when we were getting Greatsword cards. I could see a lot of rainbow parties around her. I don't think she's nearly the same tank anymore. And just kind of process elimination, she's really the only character on here that fits that role. Esther hasn't gotten that 140 and isn't she's not really a tank, you know what I mean? So there's a little more limitations here with what you might combine. But I do think obviously for fire as a card, it's exceptionally good. There's a lot of really great fire units on here to combine it with. And fire does have that Sorrow Vision card which has the luck, and obviously Brachiosaur is like the other one, but it's only 8%. I think it's a good one for mono fire, specifically speaking, not even just the rainbow. But yeah, I don't love some of the other ones here. Like, to me, these wind units are a non-factor. Basically, the earth units are basically a non-factor. The dark units are, I don't want to say non-factor, but like, yeah, you have SR Little Lila here, but outside of that, not a lot of great candidates other than Ruin Stern. The ice units are kind of nothing. See what I mean? So it's one of those ones where I look at the character
Yeah.
portraits, and I don't see a lot of characters here that I'm really using in everyday fights.
Well, we mentioned Little Leela, earlier. This is one of the ways that they work her into those Saul mirror matches. But
Absolutely.
I agree. Like for Fire, it's obviously the kind of the best position there. It's got quite a few of the top units you'd want to use. You got Hio in there. You got Rain and Shawls. So one difficult thing about the Fire agility cards is that they're physical based, in terms of the Sorrow card and also the Brachiosaur card. So this is one that, if you were having Rain, up front, and maybe you had the magic card on him, you can throw this agility card on Saul and not have to suffer those physical base stats.
Yeah, absolutely good point. Cool. All right. Well, obviously looking forward to, his impact of sorts. I like what he's doing to kind of drive the game toward a new damage type, shake things up outside of just the slash. Because not for nothing, but that will also make slash a little more viable. Where once you start getting to this game where there's a lot of different damage types out there, you can't just stack a bunch of weapon type resistances, and you will rely more on those element res or the AOE and unit res. And I do think you'll see some characters that are slash oriented come back to a little more prominence just because you're not gearing against them as hardly. But yeah, should be an interesting time.
I'm excited for that because I feel like this initial weeks of the Alaya meta has been very boring because you're essentially fighting strike with strike because your different permutations of strike, whether you mix in Urel or you mix in Edward, depending on what teams you're facing. But that I feel like has been relatively stale already, and it's only been a couple of weeks. So I like the kind of I like what Saul is bringing in, and it's only going to build on that as we go forward. So Alaya essentially was a soft meta reset, in my opinion.
Yep.
All the AOE monsters that were out there kind of are going on the shelf here for a little bit. Obviously, they're still viable depending on where you're playing, what teams you see. But in terms of against that strike team in particular, the AOE teams weren't quite as good as they were in the months past.
No, and actually to that point, I actually appreciate this because I think you will see a lot of those AoE characters get more usage now than the past month or two. Because to that same point, if everyone is stacking unit res for characters like Alaya and Soul, you might be equipping, let's say, the pod accessory instead of the Brigandine, where you're now going for that unit res instead of the area res. And I know looking at my teams right now, it's flipped. My area res on average is much lower than my unit res, which to your point of the soft meta reset, it's kind of equalizing to bring those back in line with each other in terms of what people are equipping. So I think you'll kind of see that swing again of the AOE res or AOE attacks coming back into it just a little bit, not a ton, but more than we've seen.
Definitely.
Good. Well, for PVE content, we'll kind of keep moving along here. We have the Trials of Reckoning here, where we've talked about the Ragnarok item a handful of times. It's a great item, dare I say, even like best in slot item, at least for Squall and Irvine. We're no, probably not, but I know Trials of Reckoning is still a fun PVE mode to min max and really theorycraft. You looking forward to this one too, per usual?
I mean, I'm still very disappointed that they're 1 week long because it really limits how much time I have to get in there to try to do like the individual high scores, which is really the only part that I enjoyed. The farming is very like whatever, you know.
Yep,
At least we
absolutely.
can background farm it at this point. We don't have to leave the phone or the computer on all day farming. But yeah, this item I think is, although it's just for the Final Fantasy 13 units, I think that and we talked about this a few weeks ago, that it's nice that it's actually a significant, item, for those units.
Right.
Very nice upgrade for Squall. Very nice upgrade for Irvine as well. If you're trying to kind of maximize the damage on his follow up. So I'm gonna try to get, two of them if I can. Make a couple of them.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, the days of farming Trial of Reckoning items is gone. There was a time where you would try to get like four or five because they were like the Terror Ribbon or the Prompto Bracelet, the Cloud Dan. Like those had big implications for usage, and all these new ones are exceptionally niche. We've kind of struck out with the last three. Even the Moogle Cloak for Final Fantasy VII, I don't think got nearly the upside that people were hoping for on paper. That when you consider that one, and then the Kefka clothes, and then the oh god, Final Fantasy
Pendant.
V, the pendant. Yeah, all of them just kind of whatever. And this one's actually like a real good item. Me for Trial of Reckoning, I agree. The 1 week shortening isn't great for me just because you're handcuffed to that time frame, and there's a lot of stuff you have to do to not only like make sure you're doing the regular farming, but in terms of how much it takes to like swap Esper nodes every day, to maybe like reduce bravery stats so you can get chain a lot higher. There's a lot of like minuscule things that go into it that to fit it within a 1 week time frame, it just I'd rather just not like I don't get any benefit out of it for how much work that I end up having to do for it. So
Yeah, it's
kind of
not
piss
fun.
no. But regardless, looking forward to the bonus units we know all about. For
Yeah.
mostly it will be, but we also have some.
It'd be cool to see Cypher in the game as well, because he, I believe, is the boss of the, or one of the bosses for Trials of Reckoning.
Yeah,
Obviously, that's going to be kind of clue us in that whenever this reruns, we'll be getting him as a unit. So looking forward to that, certainly.
yeah. I love hate that. I think out of all the villains they picked, I think Adia was probably more deserving, but he's for what it's worth, I guess like a semi fan favorite. Not mine, but it's I can see why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we do have some balance things coming out here for characters, MA2s and limit break upgrades. Now we do have two here for MA2s. It's Charisse and Lisette. These are we've talked about these. They're basically just like some small power creep things at this time. I don't have high hopes for either of these units and what they benefit from them. I know for hers it's that AOE res of 10, which most missile units have gotten for their 140. I know Jaden got some. I think one of the Ice Gunners got it, but they gave her the decreased chance of being targeted of 3. Again, it's fine. Nothing about that's going to move the needle on her. Um, and even Lisette.
She gets an additional 5 missile penetration as well. But
Oh,
yeah,
thank
I
you.
agree. This is so minor. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, she is a 70 cost unit and she's relatively recent, so I guess you didn't need a huge bump, but still, you would have liked to see maybe a little bit more than this.
definitely. And then Lisette, this is a lower cost unit as well. And for her, they gave her just some of that defense pen in the water killer here, where, yeah, doesn't really do anything. Probably still decent for cost limited stuff, but even then, I don't feel strongly about it.
Yeah, it's the killer will be nice for her niche of guild raids, but outside of that, it's yeah, very much whatever.
That's a really good point, though. You're right, because she is an exceptional good guild raid unit. I
Yeah,
have seen her used a lot.
definitely.
And then in terms of the limit break upgrades here, we are getting them for Rain and Charlotte and Laswell, who as part of that season one FFBE cast, they were three of the more main units, if you will. I've really appreciated a lot of these limit break upgrades, and I think these are pretty substantial ones, quite honestly, for these characters. Where for Charlotte, they're changing it here so that her limit break will now not only increase that self buff of defense and spirit of 40. It'll go from 1 turn to 2 turns, which I like a lot. It's 40 unit res for 2 turns, and it gives her a heal back below 50%. Like, that's an exceptional buff to the limit break. I don't know how you feel about it.
And 40% HP too.
Is it?
Yeah. Right under the attack
Oh,
and
good
magic
lord.
break.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
missed that's the first one. Yeah, that's big. This is
I
a
know that this LB was one that's I would almost always turn off in because it would completely kill her AP pool, but
yep.
this is so good now that you want her to cast this. Like this turns her into an amazing tank, especially when you combine that with her 40% protect and shell that she had gotten from her dream upgrade.
Yep.
So she'll be exceptionally tanky when those things are online, assuming she doesn't get dispelled. Of course, that's gonna kill most of that, but
Yeah.
overall, I like this quite a bit.
I agree. Even to your point, the dispel, you're right, will get rid of most of that. But even the heal back, I think that's a really powerful thing they did
Oh
for her,
yeah,
because we got to that point where the tank roll compression, they were a lot squishier than they should be. That heal back for most of these tanks has, elongated their effective HP because they effectively get a much bigger health pool that you have to chunk down. So I still like this for as a perma pool lightning tank. Not everyone has Alphons. This is still a great audition for her.
and when you're thinking about units who can potentially stand up to Saul and maybe Amnelis next to her, you might want to be looking at Charlotte for that matchup.
It's a good point. She was one of the original, like, stronger magic potential tanks. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. And on that line of thinking of magic tanks, Rain is kind of the OG of the tanks here, and what they're doing for him. He's getting an extra 25 Spirit Imperil in addition to the 38% Fire Imperil. He's also getting a small debuff here for enemies in terms of reducing their attack and magic stats, which will reduce the damage he takes, and then 10% regen for 3 turns as well. Overall, I like it. That double imperil is really great. I know your guild raid brain is probably very happy about that.
Especially since his this is a 2-hit attack for him too, so get double value on the double debuff. So
Yeah,
no, this is great. Like, and then if you think about him tanking for your fire magic damage dealers, you get the two different breaks or imperils there. It's really going to amplify everyone's damage. So uh, very very nice upgrade here for Rain.
agreed. And then the last one here, I actually really like what they did for Laswell's. You and I have been very pessimistic about this unit. I still am, but I think this limit break is a really lot of good things for what his problem is from an evasion perspective. Where this limit break, it's that cross shape AOE. It now breaks physical barriers. Number one, so it's a straight up damage increase. Number two, it's cheaper, 33 AP. That's a regular attack. That's not a limit break cost. That's really a sizable decrease. And then more than anything, it's the decrease of accuracy of 25% for 3 turns and the ignore sure hit for self 4. We've talked about this. Ice has nothing for like vision card support for evasion. And yet he's an evade unit, but this actually is a sizable debuff for enemies that he can do his job.
This is a fun upgrade, definitely. Like I mean, even with this, I can't see myself using ice evade, outside of maybe like a cost limited or some kind of surprise type play, but I do think that it makes him much more viable, and I think that it's a very significant upgrade for his evade because, just on his base stats, like, we looked at this a few weeks ago, I think, and, with his upgrades, he is actually, up there among some of the more evadey units in the game. So he's still waiting on that luck card. Hopefully, daggers plus katanas will get one eventually. So
Yep.
I think, yeah, once he gets that, he'll be in a better position, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's really all we have for upgrades here. We're going to transition now to the war room, talk a little bit about the meta, map analysis. I know we have limited guild war running currently. How's that going for you so far?
Going pretty good. We're kind of lined up here for second place in our division. Uh, we have the number 3 guild is in our division. So
Nice.
unfortunately, we weren't able to take them down we had a couple of pretty close matches with them, but they just had the edge on us. So, but it was fun though. It's you know, it's fun kind of getting into those heated matches where maybe you have some Viz on the line there. So, yeah. How about you? How did it go?
It's been good. We're in the L bracket. We're number one undefeated so far by a fair margin. I don't think anyone's come close to clearing us. But I've been having fun with the offensive teams. What have you been using on offense so far?
So I've been running mono Earth the whole time with Renoa.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so, yeah, I got her ready day one. Originally, I was with Dialdo and Urel, and then I switched over to Bradley in the third slot because just in case we happen to come across any cheeky evade, I wanted to make sure I was covered there. So
Nice,
yeah, and
nice,
I mean, I've been getting most stars, most days I've been getting 9 stars and um, at least 6 every day. So
awesome. So I did start off with Squall and Mono Lightning just because at the beginning of Limited Guild War I wanted to test them out a little bit, and then I got bored. I did the whole like throw the toy to the side of the room and play with a new shiny toy. I was actually inspired after our tier list last week talking about Addison and Elena. So here's the funny thing: Addison came out. Uh, to date, I've never actually run an Addison Elena team. Like I just haven't. I've been always used Wingstern or Bart's or Lucio or like literally almost any other light unit because Dark was so prevalent that sure you had Nullify Sure Hit, but like the risk reward was never there. And so and finally this week I've been using Engelbert for his anti-strike perspective, and then using Elena and Addison, and I have this excellent rotation of Ignore Sure Hit that Elena can do some damage, and Addison just nukes people. My Addison's like well over 2,000 magic stat, and just it's a really fun team to watch play.
I did actually, after we talked about it, I played around with that team as well and suggested it to a couple people in my guild, and who were kind of looking for something to play, and they had some good success with it. So definitely a solid team for sure.
So I 6-starred 2 mono strike teams today, and they included Ed Elric and Alphonse, who have guaranteed hit. The Nullify Sure Hit did nothing for them, and Alaya is not accurate enough currently that people are building her for that. Even against strike, that this team's doing well, which I not that I'm surprised by, but like I'm a little surprised by. You just wouldn't expect it, and it works.
The one spot where you will run into trouble is if it's a reincarnated Alaya and she's wearing her vision card, and maybe she has Odin on, especially if she has Odin, her card, and reincarnated,
Yeah,
you're not dodging.
no, it's
she's
true.
gonna be able to find a side hit and just nuke you.
Yep,
But not everybody is running that setup, so you can definitely
exactly.
find the good matchups.
Definitely. Well, good. And then we also have a new arena map this week, which is incentivizing the use of the Final Fantasy VIII unit. So we thought we'd do a little fun arena matchup here between the two of us. I know we technically have Guild War resuming, and I think it'll be the old Guild War map. So we figured do the arena for now. But yeah, we'll pause here real quick, boot this up. But yeah, match should be starting in 1 second. Here it is. All right. So you with the triple missile team here.
Yep.
This looks super
I
fun.
really like this map for missile. I've been playing it around with Irvine. I just got him to 120 today, so I've been having a little bit of fun with him today.
Nice. So
It's really the first time I've used him.
I've not used him yet. He's almost 120 for me. I'm waiting for some of those shards to come in from the social media banners, but I keep kind of getting low key excited for him, and I need to actually do something with him. And I'm glad to see him live for the first time here. I'm running the Mono Lightning because I actually don't have Irvine ready, right? I didn't really feel like running Renoa. I didn't want to go that Earth angle, so I'm just going with the Squall Vision card here for the main. But
Yep.
my pathing is already not what I expected it to be. This is going to be interesting.
Ooh, I didn't get the follow up there,
So,
but I'm in a kind of a good position here up high.
so it's 4 squares away and 1 range height that you'll get the benefit of that. So I'm excited to see Squall with the Honeycomb Barrier in a missile here to see what it takes for damage. I've actually never seen Squall in a missile at all. It's only been theory crafting that we've talked about.
It's gonna be pretty good with barrier. There's a follow up, pretty good.
Not bad. 20. Oh,
Pretty good damage.
that physical
Should get
that physical barrier helps a lot. That is
yeah.
huge.
She got another cast of it too, so that's tough.
I don't like her leading the way here. This is killing me. What are you doing?
Oh, that's big. That's
That's
big.
big.
You got the hate down, but can I get a double here? Nice.
Oh, 6,000
That's
damage?
that's huge. That's huge. All right, all right. Can't hit me yet. Good.
All right.
Come on, Jaden. What do we
Squall's
got?
gonna have to clutch this for me. You guys have to just run out of AP at some point.
Man, there's like no damage. But Alphonse is starting to kind of get pretty low.
You know, though, he's got
Uh,
that heal back, though. But if I kill Irvine here, he's not going to get that heal back opportunity.
oh, this is not good. Oh, good.
You know what?
That's big.
That could have been a lot more damage. That wasn't that much. I'm sweating here.
This is
You're going to kill him right now. There's no way. Unless he single targets Squall for some reason. Yeah. Holy cow.
oh man,
He's not going to live
victory.
through this. That's it. Oh man! All right, Ready Player
I
Will
love it.
0-3 against JB on the live PvP stuff.
No,
That
this map is like designed for like the arcing shot like gunners. So I've been trying to pair Irvine with other gunners that have those kind of shots and just have them stay up high. And so far in arena, like I've definitely have lost a bunch of times trying to find the limitations of the team and trying to get it to work, but it's overall working really cool. So, and my Irvine, like I said, only 120, so that's kind of what he's able to do. Not too shabby, I think, from the damage if you add everything up.
so that's the thing, and that's what I was trying to we were trying to talk about in the character reviews. It's not necessarily his specific damage; it's the damage in the total battle. That if you were to add up that number, it's a sizable percentage of total damage being dealt, and it's very cheeky in how it happens, and that it's a great anti-courage mechanic. That it's a follow-up attack, and it does scale off only a couple things, so there's only a few ways to defend against it. That yeah, you kind of pair them together. I was hoping I'd move it a little bit faster, but your team, the agility had some good like rotations there. That was fun to watch.
Them getting like the agility ups there at the beginning and kind of all being close to each other helps a lot with the speed. Um, but the follow-up attack, if I didn't have that going, like you definitely would have been able to catch me there. Like that's definitely made the difference, I think.
Right. I know a lot of people are specifically looking for Melnia here, where that's like that big. You're seeing it in action, just with a different iteration of it. Where obviously like Rugia is not anywhere near what she is. Offers a completely different set of benefits, but the concept is still the same. Particularly from the element advantage, where you talk about having an Earth unit doing that damage to the lightning units. That's just it's a significant thing to look out for. And on the soul discussion here, you're kind of seeing in action how you can kind of get around that. Where if you can just kind of do some damage ahead of time before they get close to you, you might be able to turn that fight before they really have a chance to get going.
Unfortunately, we don't really have any meaningful water gunner that might be able to pepper him from long range. I was thinking about maybe Lara Croft a little bit, but she's just the no. I mean, 120 and yeah,
Too squishy, too
it's
squishy.
yeah, it's too squishy. Like if she takes one hit, she's gone. So
But that was fun. That was good to see. Hope you guys enjoyed
yeah,
that. But yeah,
definitely.
we figured we'd talk to you just a little bit about seeing that uptick in Alaya here before we get Souls released here, which is more of a definitive hard counter. What have you been doing anything in specifically to try to take her out or take out some of the trends you're seeing? Like what do you suggest to people in trying to fight against her? I know you made a video on it, but is it working to what you thought?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, hard stacking unit resistance, hard stacking lightning resistance. Those are the best ways to get to her. And the best element that can do that is Earth. So I build teams that are centered around an Earth core. If you don't have Dialdo, I think it's much harder because not only does Dialdo just completely demolish lightning units, he's really able to stand up against the current slate of wind units very well if you have Dark Golem, get that 20% wind resistance. So if you don't have him, I'd have to figure something else out. But yeah, that's kind of been my main strategy is just building around him as my tank. And if I need to bring in like an ice unit, or if I need to bring in a wind or earth or whatever, next to him, that's what I do.
Right on. And so I know on that Earth topic, it's funny. I haven't done any teams myself without Dialdo. So you're right. I don't know how well this stands up, but I know a couple that come to mind are three units, and I mentioned this last week. One is Luel, the old magic user. She can get to null lightning, even higher than that, and she has a unit res buff. So that she in particular will be taking one damage from Alaya routinely. Now, obviously, you have to watch out for those Ed Elrics and some of those other characters where she still gets killed pretty quickly, so you need some kind of healer in there. Typically, I was using Valence for a while, but on that note, Renoa came in here now, who can also null lightning quite easily, and so, or at least come close to it. That new synergy is definitely a big one. Obviously, we know about Urel with that courage move. That's a big one, but even her innate unit res is a big thing. Outside of that, I don't know if there's a ton, not just going against that element versus element matchup, but to your point, that unit res buff, anyone that has something like that, that's a sizable advantage. And then I do think that missile angle is one to look into, even though it's not in a good place at the moment.
I have really liked another team that I have used quite a bit before we went into limited was Glassy with the Ice Bros with Reagan and Howlett. And Glassy is another one that can stand up to Alaya. Like she can't take a ton of hits, but she can take a few before she goes down, especially if she's got like the heal backs coming from the attacks and things like that. So that team, I feel like there's a little bit less margin for error, like especially as people start kind of powering up their Alayas with scrolls and things. I haven't powered up my ice team at all, so it's just running, no reincarnations. But if you get the right buffs on there and the right rotation, it does very, very well, especially if the strike team has Edward, because he's countered extremely well by those iced guys.
Absolutely. And I'll piggyback off that. Summer Glassy on that topic is one of the best tanks you can bring in there, where even if you bring in a great tank like Dialdo, he can't block the stag impact of the teammates behind him. Whereas Glaciella with that aura ability is a very natural way to counter the damage to teammates. And on the note of the ice units, yes, that team is definitely a good one. I've thoroughly enjoyed using Jaden, the Celebrated, right now because of that massive physical barrier that he has. That if you do him correctly or use him correctly, and Alphonse just doesn't break that barrier, someone else doesn't, he can stand up very well for a couple turns. And again, you put Renoa in there as well. All you have to do is just kill him once, and you're fine. I think Ice is in a really good spot right now. It was a very slow burn, but there's not enough fire. Obviously, it's going to change in like a week. Ice is going to be dead on arrival, but it's been good for the past month throwing them in there.
Definitely. Yeah, I was just about to say with Saul coming in, they're going to have less windows to operate here now, but um, you maybe can go double water plus ice. There I'm sure that there's other ways you could work it.
Yes, definitely. And on that note, kind of looking ahead to the Leonis Spireport, we have the first of the Ashen Warriors, which is technically this Astrius unit, who's kind of a former self. I don't know exactly the lore behind it per se, and I know that they've also released an Esper here to go with him, but we don't necessarily have all the details yet on that. But I don't know how much you've looked into him. Do you have any initial thoughts in seeing the new Astrius unit here?
He looks good, but I don't think he looks Saul or Alaya good, at least from what I've seen so far. Um, so definitely 100 cost caliber, I would say, just not like resetting the meta. At least from what I've seen so far, it is still very early though. Like he's only been out a week or so far. People are still trying to figure him out.
I agree. And no, I'm on that same opinion that they look to have released him to compete with those Alaya and Soul teams, and he does to a pretty decent degree. I mean, I'll quick hit a couple things here. Number one is that 15 unit res innately, but he also does have a bunch of damage mitigations in his kit that on this main passive here has a physical damage barrier of 3 times, which obviously helps versus Alaya. But he also has his counter ability here. It's a chance to counter slash and strike damage.
So the first one there with
Oh,
the 70% is how it is normally, but then when he uses his buff, it will go up to 100% for a few turns.
thank you. And I'm sorry because it's a preemptive. That's I knew I was missing something. I talked about this last week. These preemptive counters can be kind of nice because they obviously can do damage before you receive damage. So if you're in a situation where a line might be courage, one hit, she had hate down, so you're not targeting her, right? But she comes at you from the side and you can preemptively attack her where normally you might not be attacking her because she shifted the hate away. Like that's a significant way to counter that. And I know he does have, in addition to AoE courage remove to teammates, that's a big one, obviously, all the courage we're seeing. But he does have a couple things here in terms of like, I don't want to call them auras, but they're kind of like those Faris abilities where he has additional counters here that you can reduce physical damage taken with some pretty high counter rates. In addition to what I think is a follow up attack here, if I'm remembering this correctly, on his limit break, and he's another poison unit. I thought that was very odd. They went poison, poison 2 units in a row, but yeah, they've even given him a unique mechanic here in terms of his imperil, where it's I don't know the specifics of it because a lot of the translations are still kind of rough, but that you basically do like an AOE res down of like 50% of whatever their AOE res was. It's a unique mechanic. It's not a hard percent. It's like a percentage of whatever your enemy has, which I think is cool.
Yeah, so the courage removal, I thought initially it was to teammates, but it is just for himself. So he'll
Oh,
pass the unit resist to the teammates, but the courage removal is just for him.
fair.
Still awesome though.
Yep.
The He's actually the third unit in a row with poison because Melnia, I believe, also has it,
Oh,
which is pretty crazy. So it's kind of like this unit resist poison meta going on.
very
Obviously,
odd.
poison is very damaging to courage units, so that's another way to kind of get at them. Um, so the counter is one thing. Like one of his self buffs kind of amps up his counter so that he has like the preemptive counter, but also a physical damage reduction, which you were looking at there. He does also like it's not translated on WOTV Calc, but one of his buffs gets him just a flat magic reduction of 35%, which is it's like a barrier, but it can't be dispelled because it's its own status right now. It's the same magic reduction that's on that new armor. I don't know if you did that from the latest
Yes.
reliquies over in JP, but it stacks with that so that he gets up to I think like 40 or 45% just out of the box magic reduction when that buff is online. So he's set up to counter Saul and Alaya both, you know, within his kit very well, but at the same time he also can be paired with them, you know, through the lightning angle or through like the great sword devout angle. So very interesting unit that, you know, he's kind of building. It's another brick kind of in both of their silos. So
Yes.
interesting unit.
Which is funny because I wouldn't have gone that angle. I wouldn't have done another lightning unit, number one, and I wouldn't have done one that paired with that soul vision card either. I would have tried to have gotten a weapon type here that and an element type that can maybe drive a different angle in that like rock paper scissors. But at the very least, I'm kind of happy that the first Ashen Warrior came out and wasn't this like S tier broken character again, kind of like what we're seeing with some of the others. He's still again an excellent 100 cost unit. Um, I don't know. I probably won't pull for her myself because I am getting to the point now where I am bleeding for Viz, and I'm getting back into some of that spending that I've reached my threshold, if you will. But
Yeah,
he's a good unit.
I agree. Like I think that's there's a lot of warriors of the crystal coming, and you know he's the very first one. Obviously, they're harder to get, you know, once you get further into those banners, at least traditionally. But I think that I might skip him as well, just because you know I have Squall. You know I spent a bunch of Viz on him. I've got Alaya. I feel like my lightning and is pretty well set, and I'd like to kind of wait for, you know, if it is Shadowlings or Dario, I'd really love to get them, and you know once they're released,
Yeah. And to your point,
hopefully I'll pick up him as an off banner when I do.
right? And I think you and I both have Vega too, right? Did you? Yeah.
Yep.
So like we've like been keeping relatively up to date. We have Lightning's 140 coming, who I know you're very high on. That like when you talk about subbing in some of these lightning slashes, yeah, maybe not exactly the counter that he is to this like short term meta, but it's kind of one of those things that in the now like 1 month roadmap that we have, got to be a little pickier and not live in the short term, if you will. That when I'm looking beyond, I don't think Astrius has a ton there that I really think like is going to be necessary, but I could be wrong. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's very solid. I just don't see him, at least so far, I just don't see him pushing the meta like some of these characters like Saul or Alaya have, which is fine. You don't want every character to do
No.
that because, you know, that's exactly what people are complaining about right now with Saul. It is a bit too fast, but it seems like, you know, with him, maybe it's slowing down just a little bit, although he is very, very good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we'll obviously get more details as we see more replays of him. I know his Vision card and or Esper that's coming out. I think it's an Esper that came out. Is another Lightning one. So there'll be some more analysis to be done for sure.
Oh, that's a big part of it too. I mean, like the vision card and Esper can totally change how you view the character and how you can potentially build him. So, that could be the missing piece here that maybe can propel him forward.
Right. So that brings us to our Q&A section here, and we do have a question number one here. Would you be in favor of Gumi adding limits to wall play? This is for Guild Wars specifically. I ask this because I feel walls are the main thing that keep players out of high-level play or gets them to leave. Just as an example, this person suggested is limiting each unit's use to 15 to 20 times, let's say, per guild defense. Do you have any thoughts on what they're trying to state here and what their thoughts are and what you might do to change that if you agree or disagree?
I would say to answer the first part of the question, I would say I'm not in favor of Gumi limiting like the creativity or maybe what you would view as lack thereof, in terms of, setting up a wall. I don't want Gumi to do that. I want them to set general rule sets in terms of cost, and things like that, whether or rule set, type changes. That's what I think they should be doing. In terms of like, do you have to have a wall to be at the top end? Personally, I would say no, because that's kind of the whole thing that I have been doing with my guild for some time now. We don't hard wall anything. Every once in a great while, like in limited, maybe I'll call for something, but even at that point, it's not, not everybody in my guild can run it, and that's fine. But I'm not a huge fan of it, so I don't use it, and we've been doing fine. Are we going to be able to break into the top 5 or top 3? Probably not, but I'm okay with that. We're still, competing and fighting against the best guilds in the server. So I don't think that you need it. And I'm not. By the way, I'm not the only guilds in the top 15 or 20 that doesn't use a wall. So
Right.
there's definitely a couple others out there too.
Yeah. No, I would generally agree with you. And the thing about the walls here, in terms of keeping players out of top end play or getting them to leave, I actually just want to talk about that notion for a second because I think one of the things people overestimate is how many units end up being wall units. There's really not that many at the top end of the game. For guilds that like create too many units that you have to pull to put on walls, that's how you burn your players out. So that's why you see these dark metas last for so long, is because the guild leaders are essentially like, listen, guys, we're not going to make you pull every single unit. We're going to find a couple that are like really great long term investments. We're just going to use them every single day. And so, to me, like in terms of burnout, there's nothing keeping people from being on a top end that's wall oriented. Wall units are typically the most popular units. No one's walling very niche units. It's typically not happening. And so I think that's not necessarily the barrier you think it could be. And in terms of getting them to leave, I think it's probably more activity level than it is unit oriented or wall unit oriented. Not everyone wants to log in every single day and change defense and constantly manage your toggles or min max your toggles or be told what to run on offense if you want to stay general to an element. I think it's a lot of other things that prevent people from getting in there and how quickly they end up leaving, other than just being wall oriented, if that makes sense.
I absolutely agree with that. That second point. I would add to that indeed I don't think that it's necessarily the wall that is the competitive advantage. It's the fact that those players are active, that they're coordinating, that they're testing and mocking and stress testing whatever team they use. And that is the competitive imbalance or difference between being in the top end and not. I think obviously there is some spend difference there too, and even more so pronounced with reincarnation.
Right.
But I think that if I had to balance spend versus actual dedication, I would say that it's probably like a 75-25 kind of thing.
Yeah, totally, totally right. Because I could come out tomorrow and be like, guys, we're gonna wall Eileen and Oberyn and Velis, and that wall's gonna get beat by everything. Like it's not just the fact that it is a wall; it's that someone and many people, not just one person, are actively mocking and tuning and researching and building something, and that's the competitive advantage. And that's a lot of work. It's hours, and we've talked about this. The mock window is during business hours of the day, so like not everyone has the chance to mock. It's very hard to be switching your guild before 3 p.m. for many. That those are more of the logistical hurdles than the actual wall itself.
I mean, the way that I generally do it in my guild is I mean, I'm testing all the time, so whenever I find a team that I think is good, we'll post it. Other people do the same, and if people like that team and they can run it, they'll use it. Maybe they'll use one of the other five or six variations, and that's what our defense or that's what our offense ends up being. And so far, at least in this kind of more as we're getting more into rainbow play, I feel like that's working even better because I think in the old days with walls, people could rely more on just having a good elemental spread to be able to cover whatever they that might be coming in on that day. I think with rainbow, it's a little bit harder to do that. So
Absolutely is. Yep. And then the second question here is do you prefer playing into the meta or countering the meta? I know for high level guild play, you don't end up with much of a choice sometimes, but what do you enjoy doing more? I'll let you kick that off one if you want.
I very much like to counter the meta, and because I view it like a puzzle. Like you're trying to whenever the greatest unit, the latest and greatest unit comes out, you're trying to find different ways to defeat that unit. And that's exactly why I made that video about Alaya a couple of weeks ago. That was kind of my whole research process, and I decided to kind of share it with everyone. But yeah, I don't like playing the latest meta unit. I like to figure out and solve that puzzle and defeat them. Essentially, that's what I do. How about you?
A complete agreement. I knew we'd be the same on this. That's the whole like basis of the curiosity of being a analytical oriented content creator, where we look to crack the code that everyone just seems to do because of maybe they just copy paste what JP did or they copycat what someone else does. And I think that's the most fun thing about playing the game is finding those ways to counter the meta because they do exist. It's tough though, but they do. And I know like at the top end of the game, not only do you have to counter the meta, but you have to counter other things too. It's the additional burden. Like we talked about this during the dark meta. Anyone could make a light team that's like 80% dark res and just go hunt dark and beat them all. That's fine. But you bring that same light team against all other seven elements, you're going to lose all of, like, you can't have that. So finding that team that not only counters the meta, but still is like a viable, healthy team outside of that is an exceptionally fun challenge that we do every single day in the top end of the game forever. It's not a short term thing. That's literally how the game is played there. So, yeah, definitely with you on that point of trying to counter the meta. A lot of fun.
I mean, I'm generally pulling those meta units, but I usually play them as much to kind of learn more about them, learn the fine tuning, so that it makes it easier for me to counter them and kind of know their weaknesses even better. So often I'll go hard and play those units for a couple of weeks, and then I'll put them away. And I'm very much in that counter counter phase.
Yep. And to kind of tie this conversation back to the last one, those meta units typically are the walls that we're talking about on defense because they are the most consistent units that can beat the widest of variety of things you throw at them. That's the nature of a wall. It's which team can beat the most variations of things, and the best one team that can do that is the best wall. But on offense, that's not true. You can run whatever offense you want that to beat whatever scout teams you have, and that's where the creativity comes in. So to your point, I pull these meta units because they're typically used on defense because they are the best theoretically objective thing to use. But it's on the offense side you get a little more creative and you can use whatever you want to try to counter anything else you're seeing. So I agree, you get the best of both worlds on offense and defense. And then last Q&A is one that we ended up throwing into the pool because coming up on the third week of October here, which is not this week, but the one after it, we're getting the Reincarnation Festival as a major content. And just explaining a little bit about that, what that is, if I recall in JP, it was essentially half-cost reincarnations for the poll that many people, you probably should have if you haven't already, I think it's too late, but you voted on which unit you wanted to reincarnate, and whoever the popularity or the popular vote is, they get that half cost to reincarnate. Anything else I'm missing there for what the festival actually entails?
So it is permanent units plus Warriors of the Crystal only. Obviously, limited units aren't going to be included in the vote, but yeah, there'll be one winner for each element, and I believe the I believe all of the materials are halved, like not just scrolls. I want to say that the other stuff is halved too. I could be wrong in that, but I think that's true.
Do
We want
you?
to speculate on some winners.
Yeah, let's speculate on some winners here, and we can talk about who we voted for. So I'm going to be biased here and just keep the UR filter on. I don't think no one is voting for MR. They were
Yeah.
on the poll, but yeah. And then um, non-limited units, so perma pool. So I'll have that filter enabled too. So yeah, we'll go down here. We'll talk about a general strategy in a second, but we'll talk about who you voted for if you want, who you think will win. Yeah, let's start off with who you think's going to win. Who's your prediction here?
I think that probably King Mont will win. I
Same.
didn't vote for him. I voted for Hio actually.
Me too.
So because obviously I really like Hio and I wouldn't normally invest scrolls into him, but if it was half cost, I would. So that's why I voted for him.
Literally that. So my Mont is already basically at 40 reincarnations. Well, that's very good, and he's very good. It's one of those things where I'm like, I want to reincarnate Hio, but it's not economically feasible because he's just not a top tier unit. And obviously, you talk about allocating your resources best. But yeah, I want to use him, and so this is a great opportunity at all these units. I gave him the vote.
Plus, it's like Mont's he's gotten all of his upgrades now. He's got his MA2, he's got his LB upgrade. Hio doesn't have any of those things, so I feel like he's got more to come. That maybe he has got more potential.
Yeah,
So that's another reason.
yeah. Well, good. We'll see what ends up happening there, and we'll move on to ice here. Who do you think's the predicted winner for ice?
I don't know. This is a tough one. I feel like it's probably going to be Velis. I didn't vote for Velis. I voted for Reagan.
Oh, nice. I think I voted for Velos off the top of my head, if I recall, because I have not fully reincarnated any supports. And not because I don't think they're worthy of it. A few of them are worthy of it. It's just priority wise, I don't have the, again, management that out of all the support units, I'm like, I want to fully reincarnate him. I think I gave him the vote.
It would be a significant bump for him, and getting another, couple thousand HP and a bunch of magic would be nice for sure.
Well, and I've said the two for these offensive oriented supports who that do weave in attacks, they really do benefit because that 180 magic stat is pretty sizable for potential damage output. Whereas your
Yeah.
heal bots, it's not always that same return on investment.
Do you think there's any chance anybody else takes it down here, like a Jaden or Alaya?
I could see Alaya for certain. I mean, you consider how popular she is. I have no reason why people maybe wouldn't vote for her because
A lot of
most people
a
have
lot of
her.
people have, yeah, exactly.
Yep, yep,
I,
100%.
I wouldn't mind that too, because I wouldn't mind giving her a few scrolls. I've always liked her as a unit.
Yeah, I probably would pass if it was her, just because again, that scrolls I gotta decide. But
Definitely.
she's a good candidate. For Wind, who do you think is winning here?
So I voted for June. Considering that she won the popularity contest, I think it's probably going to be her. But I could also see Glassy. She's also extremely popular. I don't
Absolutely.
know.
I voted June because, and Glassy is a great candidate. I would max reincarnate her. She's one of the few wind units who I think has good lasting potential. But for me, June is the kind of unit that I just talked about earlier. She's kind of been left in the dust, and I do think the reincarnation is enough that she would be more competitive.
She did just get the LB upgrade in JP as well, which is an aura, the 40% damage reduction.
Oh,
So
awesome.
another nice upgrade for her.
Yeah, that's
Breaks
awesome.
barriers too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And this is usually turned off. This limit break is usually off, and you consider the AP reduction. Like, this is a different kind of character if you lean into that offensive with the defense pen and whatnot, which it's there.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, nice upgrade for sure.
Sweet. For Earth, who's the winner and who'd you vote?
I voted for Dialdo.
Me too.
Um, and I think he's going to win. He should win. I hope he wins. I already have some scrolls into mine. I was excited for him when he first came out, and I went about 40 rounds on him, but I didn't go any deeper. I thought he was good enough there, so I would finish him off if he wins.
Yeah, so I think I'm at 20 for him. And yeah, I need him to win. He's one of my top tier priorities here. That should he win, he's getting the majority of my short term investment here for reincarnation.
I honestly can't see anybody else winning.
No, me neither.
Because I
Unless
mean, the other nice thing, at least in JP, is all the winners got to put on like a special banner where you were able to pull them, and I think there was like some good deals and stuff for it. So hopefully people pick Dialdo so they can also pull him, maybe for cheap potentially.
absolutely, absolutely. What about Lightning here? Who was the vote for you? Is this it? Right? This is
I
it.
guess so. I mean, they got a lot of limited units.
I think I voted
I
Resnick then for the same reason for Velas. I think I picked her because I wanted a support. I wanted the opportunity to reincarnate a support where I wouldn't have prior.
I voted for Resnick too.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's so good, even now.
absolutely.
So yeah, I hope she wins.
Yep.
But I mean, Vega. I don't know if I would put any, even if he wins, maybe. Ranan, I might just because he's cool, but I
Yeah.
hope it's Resnick.
If it's Renan, I would stand for him. I do like him still, and I think actually out of all the units, I think he scales very well with the reincarnation as that bulkier mage that we're talking about. He of all the mages fits it the best. Um,
He's part of that devout group, so you could put him with Saul
right?
in the same group. So
Yep.
good way to cover your water weakness.
Good stuff there. For water units, who's the winner? Who'd you pick?
So it's showing Glassy here, but she's definitely not included.
That's a good
Um,
point. Good point.
I voted for Amnilus because I've already heavily reincarnated Perrine, but I feel like Perrine is probably going to win.
I would agree. If I'm guessing the vote, it's probably Perrine. I've already maxed reincarnated my Perrine, so I won't get any benefit from that. But I would agree. Amnelis is a good candidate. I think I voted Amnelis if I'm remembering. Um, yeah,
It's tough if Perrine ends up winning because she's with Saul and Alaya both here now. Her use opportunities have gone down quite substantially.
yep, agreed.
She's still a great unit, though. I mean, we talked about that last week.
Yep. Actually, to your point, we just did this UR tier list. Like, she's very quickly falling off the S tier. Like, probably yesterday. Like, there's very few upsides for her. We probably were disingenuous in keeping her there. That she probably should be in the lower tier. All right, we get to light here. Who do you think the winner is, and who do you pick?
Hopefully, people didn't vote for Lucio. I hope that he's already a free reincarnation.
Yep.
But I think that he might have been on there, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um, I voted for Stern. I hope that he wins. I don't have any scrolls into him.
that works. I
I
think
think I think he probably will. I think he's a very popular unit.
I would agree. I think he wins also. Now I've already max reincarnated him as well, so I'll lose out on that opportunity. I voted for Engelbert personally, where again one of those units I would never max reincarnate on my own. It's just not worth it. But the stats you give this dude at max reincarnation of an extra 3,300 HP, the crit evade here. You look at some of the stats against like anti evade. Now yes, he's gonna get nuked out of the sky by magic, but like he's a very still solid tank in his own regards compared to Warrior of Light, even that I would like to see him have the opportunity just because of I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Especially with like some of the LB upgrades they've been giving on some of these tanks. Like if he gets the physical reduction, like
Yeah,
damn, watch out.
right? Absolutely. Which brings us finally then to Dark, and I feel like we'll be unanimous on this that who the winner is and who we voted for.
It's definitely gonna be
It
Raph.
has to be.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing little Leela. Actually, I think that she wouldn't be a bad candidate, but I feel like Raph, a lot of people were waiting for that unit pulled her, and yeah, it's definitely going to be her.
100% agreed. She's going to win, and I voted for it too. And yeah, that's my general strategy here. Is we talked about some of these core centerpiece units. Dialdo and Raph are the two that I'm top prioritizing here for the reincarnation. My scrolls, what I have left, they're going to drive the engine for a lot of teams. Everyone else is kind of like a want, not a need. We look at Hio, you know, Renan, Resnick, Velas. It'll be cool, but like it's whatever.
I think it kind of goes back to our general philosophy on who gets the most value out of the reincarnations, and to me, it's the tank first and foremost. And those have been the units I primarily have reincarnated. I did some a little bit on Dialdo, as I said. I did some on Glassy, and yeah, they've been units that you can build around, and especially for rainbow play, that's very nice to have that.
Totally. And I've been going for the units that skew a certain way on the impenetrable resistances. And that's not necessarily tanks. That can be your damage dealing units that we've seen characters like Wingstern and Hyo, the amount of like, area res they have, that those impenetrable resistances, like their effective HP, still it's disproportionately higher than other units because they have these impenetrable resistances, like King Mon with the all element res and Sephiroth's another one with the all element res. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tank, but it's the same concept of why you do the tanks. In addition to obviously just the extra stats, which you'd be surprised do make the difference a lot of time in these damage dealers and hitting their thresholds. But I agree the tanks have a clear cut, value not only as a centerpiece for making a team, but for what they offer for rainbow teams with Pierce and Mace, some of the sword groups. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the bottom line is for folks out there, if you weren't already saving your scrolls for that reincarnation festival, uh, save them for that because, you know, especially if you're looking at reincarnating any of those units that we just talked about or any of the other non-limited units. Um, I think there's also going to be a bunch of deals for scrolls and stuff like that, which, to be honest, have already gone way down in price and, you know, have been pretty proliferant, you know,
Way more
and
accessible.
so
Yep,
yeah,
they're going to be
should
on
be.
bingo boards, I think now too. If I so, I think there's like 400 scrolls on a bingo board now. Something to that
Yeah,
effect.
that was one of the perks with Saul coming in is 6 rainbow spheres and 400 scrolls are added into the bingo boards from now on, they said.
Awesome.
So that'll be helpful too. I
Yeah.
think it is getting to the point where, especially, you know, for light spenders and people who have bought some of these things, you're going to be able to start diving into those old backlog units a little bit. You get to the point where you have enough that, hey, maybe I can do 20 rounds on these older units like a King Mont or so that'll be fun to kind of revisit some of those.
Yeah. Do you have final one? We'll end off here. Do you have an OG unit that you're just waiting for to have that access to throw at them that you haven't been able to yet?
It has been King Mont's, and yeah,
Oh, okay.
we talked about that the other day. I was like, I think I'm gonna put some in the King Mont. You're like, oh, wait a minute. I was like, oh, you're right. I should wait.
Yep.
So yeah.
I
How about
think
you?
Whisper is still mine. It's just one of those things
Okay.
I would never do it, but like the day comes that I have excess, I would do it just for fun, just to do it. Like I don't know if I hopes be awful, but like let's roll with it.
Another one that I'd be happy to do would be Katone, just because
Hmm.
she's like a manual PvP favorite of mine and many others. So that's another one I would, and obviously like getting a ton of HP there would help drain
The
force
Drain
builds
Force
quite a bit. So
immediately came to mind. Yeah. So good stuff. All right. Well, that's everything we wanted to talk about today. You know, a lot of game changing content coming out here in the next week or so, and we'll obviously look forward to covering it more in depth. But that's it for now. So JB, good seeing you as always, man. Have a good night, and
all right,
everybody, we'll talk to you soon.
see you guys next time.
Take care.